How's it going, YouTube? Coming in today with another video, and today, guys, the brand new is going to be Sky Striker. Now, I do hope that you enjoyed today's video. It has taken me a bit of time after the ban list to post this, but I really wanted to make sure that every single card choice in this was perfect, because I spent multiple nights up till 3 or 4 in the morning studying the format, looking at DB replays, watching different games. I also was making sure that I knew the best decks of the format, the worst decks of the format, which tech cards were being played, and this is all really important when you're looking at constructing Striker, because it's a toolbox deck. The amount of different cards that you can play that are just in engine, let alone the amount of utility cards and utility spots that you just have in the deck. So I really wanted to make sure that I had a really solid list that you can bring to a tournament and do exceptionally well. So I do hope that you do enjoy today's video, because it's gonna be a lot to talk about. Also, just talking about which tech cards are gonna be really good, which ones are really bad, and then also just talking about different interactions in the format and the reasons why I play the cards that I do. So if you haven't already checked my sponsors over at Imperium Duelist, Dragon Shield, or Gem, definitely go ahead and do so. All down in the description below. Let's hit 17,000 as fast as possible. So definitely go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And without further ado, let's hop right into the first topic. So the first thing I want to talk about is going to be cards like Book of Eclipse, Nibiru, Lava Golem, Raw Spear Mode. These cards are all very irrelevant against Striker, which is amazing, because if you're putting up your first turn board, you don't really have to fear these cards. If you are going second, then even more so, they're just not going to really be that big of a deal. You can run into situations where you do get like Nibiru, and that's awkward, but usually game 2 and 3, that just gets sided out anyway, so never even going to be a problem. And so that's something that I think is going to be really important too. Book of Eclipse, of course, if they already have it set and then you normal like Rose, that's going to be unfortunate. But at that point, it just kind of is what it is. And you'll see the list and how I feel like back row just won't really matter. There's a lot of really cool options that we're playing in the deck right now, so I do hope that you enjoy that. The only way that you could actually play cards like Eclipse in Striker 2 would be if you were playing like a Utopia double package, and then you could like attack one of their face down like Shangri-La and then go into like a Zeus play too. So maybe that's an option, not something that I would do, but you also just can't play Book of Eclipse because of the fact that Striker's worst enemy is a set monster. So unfortunate that one of the better cards you just can't really play. You can still play cards like Book of Moon potentially for like just setting it and then letting your opponent go ahead and then using it on their turn, maybe a little bit better. Same thing with like Book of Eclipse, maybe a little bit better in that sense. But at the same point, I don't really feel like you need this. You can't really play like Lava Golem or Spear Mode unless you're playing like the Runic engine and you're not really playing as many Ray or Rose, because at that point you kind of need your normal summon, especially if you open up like 2 and you have the availability to go into things like Zeke. So I think that's a bit more important too. But there's a lot of different cards that are out to boards right now that we don't really fear, and I think that's another reason to give Striker a chance this format, because I think it'll be really solid. And the other thing is going to be the availability of going to have tasking into Engage, into Talents, into Duster. And that's another thing that's really scary about going first with this deck, is that if your opponent goes like Thrust into Duster on you, and that's kind of rough. But at that point, you're only setting like one card, and it's usually chainable, like a different dimension ground or a dimensional barrier, because that card is still legal. But so I think that Thrust is just another card that really does power up Striker for what it is. I think that's really crazy, just being able to play 4 Engage in the deck. You know, that's always going to be a-okay. So definitely a really crazy card as of now. Talking about my hand trap lineup, I do play Nibiru. I think this card is just super necessary, especially if you're playing against Kashtira, of course. I feel like playing against Kashtira is the same thing as Toss format playing against Thunder, except I feel like it's a little bit better now because of the fact that if they have Colossus and you have Burner, it doesn't do anything. You need exactly Imperm Chalice or Widow Anchor. But now if it's a Rise Heart, if they have like Goliath, that's one thing, but like Burner actually just destroys a Rise Heart, so that's also really cool. Nibiru gives Cash the same end board as Salad, so I think that's kind of nice too. I think this is really necessary alongside just all the different rogue decks that we're going to be seeing. If you play against like anything Runic related or like Labyrinth, then of course Nibiru is not going to be that good, but we're not really playing many cards that just are dead against those matchups, just Nibiru. I am playing Ash and Bell because Runic is going to be one of the most like popular decks out there right now. Out of all my testing so far, I've seen Runic the most. So having Ash and Bell for the fountain effect is going to be really imperative. And especially if you open up both, then you can just Ash the Hugin. If they have a fountain anyways and they try to use a card, and then you can go ahead and Bell the fountain, and then they really lose. So I do think that that's going to be really important. When branded is one of the best decks, you need Ash for branded fusion and then Ghost Spell for things like branded in red and banishment. Of course, if they have loss, that's another thing, but that's like fine. Imperm, because it's Imperm, of course, it's still like a really broken card. I don't know if I would run any of the other hand traps right now. I just don't think that they're as good, but I think that these four in particular are going to be just the top four that you can play in the deck at the moment, and things that I definitely see myself playing moving forward. The next thing is going to be a card that you really have to look out for right now, and that's going to be Anti-Spell. Now, Anti-Spell is a card that's always really been just like an FDK. I'm citing Cosmic Cyclone, and you'll see that it's really important because of things like Runic Fountain. So at the same time, you really want to make sure that you have the Cosmics on the side for Anti-Spell as well. This card's going to be really prevalent in this format with the fact that Runic's going to be everywhere, multiple different tasking and tactics running around. You have Dark Ruler, Regeki, like just so many crazy spell cards that I feel like this card is going to be a staple in sideboards, especially because I feel like Sword Soul is going to be one of the most popular decks, and that's actually really favorable for Striker too, because it's like one burner and one anchor or imperm just destroy the entire board. So that's kind of crazy. That's kind of nice. But so having Anti-Spell around is definitely going to be threatening, so just make sure that you are prepared for that. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be their Chameleon one. If you are in a situation where you want to go first post like game one, let's say that you might have like lost game two, or you think that they're going to make you go first, or you make it to like game three and you want to go first, I think it's going to be the safest floodgate to run. It's a very strong card, especially against Cash. This card's kind of crazy. If you play against Sword Soul, it's insane. If anyone's still playing like Fluanderies, it's crazy. So I just think this is going to be the most versatile for you, and this is definitely the one that you want to run, because again, you can run this in Striker and it literally just doesn't matter. But again, you really want to make sure that you have the Cosmic Cyclones for the Runic Fountain. I think that that's going to be one of the top 3 decks of the format, like some variant of Runic, probably Runic Sprite. But at the same time, Cosmic is going to be a really necessary card in the sideboard. Looking at the list here, the first thing I'm going to point out is going to be the one that everyone might be like, why are you running that card? And that's Droplet. Droplet is really solid outside of the Cash matchup. It's still going to be one of the craziest cards that you have in Striker. If you look at my main deck, we have Nibiru, we have triple burner, we have triple anchor, we have tactics and imperm to go ahead and deal with the Cash end board. So I'm not necessarily concerned about playing against Cash. I look at this the same way as dealing with a Colossus. Like I was saying earlier, I think that it's really not that bad, and I think that Striker gives Cash a really tough time, because what are they going to do with Mindhacker? Banish a Kagari? Sure. You know, like whatever. So I think that that's kind of cool. This is something where I think that this deck really does excel in that matchup. So looking at cards like Droplet into any other matchup, the card's crazy still. If you activate like Tactics and they Baron negate, and then you just Droplets and Tactics negate Baron still Chi-Shao, like kind of wild, you know? So there's a lot of things that you can do with Droplets still. Of course, if you like target their monster with Widow Anchor and they negate, and then you can go Droplet, send the anchor, make that like the 3rd spell engrave, negate the monster that negated it, and then steal the other monster. Like there's a lot of things that you can do with Droplet that I think is really necessary. Lancia, of course, this card's really crazy. If you're playing against Runic, you want to make sure that you have this, because at that point your opponent can't banish anything, so they can't activate their cards outside of like special summoning their cards. Then you also have this against Kashtira, which puts them in a really awkward position. They can't use Prosperity, they can't use Rise Heart, they can't use a lot. So that's going to be really important as well. I think that Thrust into D-Barrier is going to be really crazy. This is a card that you just want against things like Despia. Makes the matchup really easy. This is a matchup that I would choose to go first. I wouldn't side in their Chameleon one. It's a bad card against Despia. But I would side in cards like the D-Barrier and then potentially even Lancia, because of the fact that at that point you shut off things like Banishment, you shut off Branded in Red, these cards that need to banish. Also, it shuts off the Albion play, because at that point, Albion can't banish monsters because they want to dump Lubellion. So I think that's also going to be really solid. You could put in like Droplet, which is equally fine. But Lancia might be a bit better. It just really depends. Lancia might be better if you were going second into the matchup, and then going first into the matchup, you just have Droplet. But then even with Lancia, you do shut off the availability of your opponent having an evenly match. So that's also kind of cool. You just wait till they call battle phase, activate evenly, chain Lancia, and then it's just kind of over from there. They have no battle phase, so that means you get another turn, and in Striker, you always want another turn, so that's pretty cool. But beside that, I am running Call by the Grave. This card got really good now because of the fact that there's only 2 shufflebacks in the graveyard, so that's really cool because now if they go Branded and Red Target Tragedy, you can still banish it with Call by the Grave. And it's not like banishing a Shark Cannon, then they get like a free ad anyway. You could play like double Shark Cannon, but I think that card's like the worst one. So I do like having Call by just because it's a lot more versatile. For other situations, so this might be relevant. Let's say that your opponent had like a Nibiru in graveyard and they tried to Nibiru you can still like Call by the Nibiru in grave and like shut it off. So just another thing to think about. It's the same thing if they go to like Unicorn Effect, then they have one in grave. It's just the other uses of Call by that make it a very versatile card rather than like a Shark Cannon that I think is really relevant. And then if you play against like Sprite, and then they have like the Bujin link to go ahead and summon Toad, they only have the double cross to bring the Toad back. So Shark Cannon or Call by the Grave on Toad, again, is just going to be killer. I think the list overall is going to perform really well. Triple Burner, this is something that we've done in the past, and it's still one of the best cards to go ahead and just break apart a board. The only other thing that I was thinking about is maybe cutting down a Burner and a copy of Triple Tactics and playing like 2 Chalice in the main deck, or 2 Offerings to the Doom, because I feel like if you're in a situation where you want to go first, then you can always go ahead and play like the Offerings to the Doomed, and then it just becomes like another card that you can set. But at the same time, if I'm going first against a deck, I'm probably not trying to set too many cards because, again, Thrust into Duster, or if they have like evenly, and there's just like so many different situations where choosing to go first is like scary to do. But at the same time, a lot of times your opponent might like expect you to go second, so like it's also kind of safe to do. So it's really a 50-50 toss up there. But I do think that this list will perform this format. I think that it's really solid. I was really back and forth in cards like Lightning Storm. I was like, this card's not that good, but I think that it really is. If you play against all these different decks that have like a lot of sets, especially if you play against like Despia, Lightning Storm just becomes a lot better because you just force everything, which is really nice too. And even if they have like a Judgment, like they have to trade with Lightning Storm if they have other things they want to protect. So I think the card overall is just really solid. But if you did enjoy the list today, definitely let me know down in the comments below what you thought was really cool, things that you think that you would change, or things that you've tried out so far this format, because I'm definitely interested to hear. But if you haven't already joined my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, definitely go ahead and do so. And if you want a coaching session over at Medify, definitely go ahead and do that as well. But if you have any questions, feel free to PM me on Discord. I hope that everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.